Many people believe that the first black people to arrive in Britain were slaves or servants. However, if you look through British history, there's evidence of influential African and Caribbean people back through the centuries. I'm going to read you a quote from a letter from Queen Elizabeth I in the year 1596. The letter was sent to Lord Mayor of London and to other mayors and sheriffs of different towns in England. It goes like this. Her Majesty, understanding that several blackamoors have lately been brought into this realm, of which kind of people there are already too many here, Her Majesty's pleasure therefore is that those kind of people should be expelled from the land, and for that purpose instruction is given to the bearer, Edward Baines, to take 10 of these blackamoors that were brought into this realm by Sir Thomas Baskerville on his last voyage and transport them out of the realm. So what does this tell you about blackamoors and their presence in England at this time? One of the earliest recorded images of an African in Britain is a black trumpeter depicted on the Westminster Tournament Roll of 1511. This musician was probably from North Africa and was employed by both Henry VII and Henry VIII. In 1601, Elizabeth I issued a proclamation in which she declared herself highly discontented to understand the great numbers of negars and blackamoors which are crept into this realm, who are fostered and relieved, or fed, here to the great annoyance of our own liege people, that want the food which those people are consuming, as also for that the most of them are infidels, having no understanding of Christ or his gospel. By the late 16th century, trade had opened up between West Africa and Britain, and Africans began to settle in Britain, becoming part of the population, especially in seafaring places like Bristol, London, Liverpool and Glasgow. Black men and women made appearances in the diaries of Samuel Pepys and in 18th century portraits. Black sailors are recorded serving with Captain Cook on the Endeavour in 1768, and it's the seafaring Africans and Caribbeans who begin to feature in political and public arenas, often in the fight against slavery. Olaudah Equiano was a sailor. In the year 1789, he actually wrote a book about his experiences and then toured the country giving lectures on the evils of slavery. Jamaican sailor William Davidson became a radical political leader in the wake of the Peterloo Massacre in Manchester in 1812. He was a member of the radical group caught trying to overthrow the government in what was known as the Cato Street Conspiracy. Unfortunately for him, there was a police informant in the ranks. So for his troubles, in the year 1820, he was hung first, then had his head chopped off at Newgate Prison, now known as the Old Bailey. Can you find the names and pictures of other prominent black Britons of the 17th and 18th century? Just like today, back in the 1700s, the busiest trading areas of most British cities also had a high proportion of coffee houses. But the growth and popularity of coffee coincided with one of the darkest episodes in Britain's history. This is a Jamaica wine house, but it used to be called the Jamaica Coffee House. At one time, coffee houses were very popular across the entire country, and people would go there to do business. They go there to invest in coffee, they go there to invest in sugar, they go to invest in people, and that's where they conduct their business. The question to ask yourself is, in your local area, are there any street names or buildings that have an African or Caribbean connection as far as their name's concerned? Around the financial or market areas of any town or city, you might still find evidence of those early coffee houses. This is evidence of one in London. It's called Lloyd's Coffee House. There's many connections between Lloyd's Coffee House and African history. Lloyd's Coffee House used to be the headquarters for what is now Lloyd's of London, a massive insurance company. But Lloyd's of London began insuring slave ships. With the growth and popularity of coffee houses, there also came a demand for sugar and tobacco, and the British economic power base came to rely on the triangular trade. The triangle of trade was made up of 3 journeys: the outward passage from Europe to Africa carrying manufactured goods, the middle passage from Africa carrying African captives who would be forced to work as slaves on the coffee and sugar plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas, and the final journey from the British-owned plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas, sending coffee, sugar and tobacco back home.
I'm here in the Docklands area of London. This particular dock is called the West India Dock, and it was built to handle a trade that came from the West Indies. The trade involved things like sugar, coffee, tobacco, and many other tropical products that helped to make Britain rich using African labour.
Docklands, rivers or canals are often rich hunting grounds for evidence of trading connections with Africa and the Caribbean. Most of Britain's towns and cities have a trading or financial area. I'm here in one of the most powerful financial districts in the world. This part of London is known as the City of London, and it's interesting that here in this great trading epicenter there's rich evidence of black history.
I'm in the Bank of England, one of the most important banks in Britain. This bank was set up in 1694. Before that time, money was controlled by the goldsmiths. They'd make items from gold, they'd even lend money to the king. But where was all this gold coming from?
I'm holding a real solid gold bar. It's incredibly heavy. Some of Britain's earliest trading power came from a wealth of gold extracted from Africa. In 1325, Timbuktu in Mali was one of the biggest centers of trade in the world. The markets there brought in merchants from Nigeria, Egypt, Venice and Genoa, where they traded manufactured goods for gold. Timbuktu was ruled by the generous African king of Mali, Mansa Musa. He was richer than all the kings of Europe and was probably the richest man in the world at the time. One of the first British mass-produced gold coins takes its name from the region of West Africa where much of the gold used to make the coin originated.
Well, in 1663 a new coin was introduced. It was gold, originally intended to be valued at £1. The gold in it was just below the face value of the coin, but the value of gold was fluctuating so wildly at that time that the value of this coin actually went as high as 30 shillings, that's £1.50 in today's money, and it was called a guinea because the gold came from the Guinea coast of Africa. It originated from there. And this gold then came back to Britain and it drove the economy of Britain, or helped to drive it. It wasn't the only force, I mean, there were other factors, but it was a major force. In times of crisis, people always want gold.
Yeah.
If you look back at history, every time there's been a war, price of gold has gone up.
I've been on many guided history tours. You'll find them in most of the big towns and cities in Britain. But have you noticed they rarely mention any black people or their place in British history? If you take a walk around your nearest town or city, you can find clues to the local black history, often in the names of the oldest shops, cafes or even the streets. you'll find the contribution of black people to British history and society goes back centuries.
The influence is everywhere. It's all around you in the streets, the buildings, the architecture. But people walk past it every single day and don't even notice it. But the fact is, it's all around you if you know where to look.
Where's the African influence in this quiet English square? It's something you'll find in many village greens, cemeteries, and at war memorials. It's got ancient spiritual significance, and it's of African design.
And it's this thing right here.
You can find imitation obelisks like this one all around Britain, most often in key locations that hold a particular significance. The original obelisks date back thousands of years to Africa, where they were placed outside temples, probably as symbols of rebirth. So it's interesting that they now commonly appear in cemeteries and in particular as war memorials. In 1963, Martin Luther King gave his inspiring "I Have a Dream" speech in front of an imitation obelisk called the Washington Monument.
This obelisk is referred to as Cleopatra's Needle, although it was built long before she was even born. It's 21 meters tall, it weighs 180 tons, and is carved out of solid rock 3,500 years ago. Here's the question. How old is London? London's roughly 2,000 years old. So it means that people in Africa were capable of producing things like this, using their art, science, technology, 1,500 years before London even existed.